The sound echoed through the brittle silence like a gunshot. 3 sharp knocks against weather-worn wood. Jed Callahan's eyes snapped open. His boots were still on, heels resting on the splintered edge of the porch rail, rifle across his lap, untouched bottle of rye sweating beside him in the heat. He hadn't heard a knock in years. The desert wind moaned low, dragging dust across the empty yard. The horses in the paddock stirred, but didn't whinny. Even the flies held still. Bang, bang, bang. He rose slow, bones creaking like the porch steps beneath him. Through the screen of sun and heat shimmer, a figure stood beyond the warped glass window. Tall, plain dress, boots cracked from travel. A second shape half hid behind her skirt. Small, still. Jed opened the door. She didn't smile. She just looked him square. "I was told you need a cook." The voice was steady. Not friendly, not cold. Just true. The kind of voice that didn't waste breath on what it didn't mean. Her eyes were gray as old ash, skin tanned deep, jaw set like it had been set that way for years. Behind her, the little girl peered out. Brown curls matted under sunbonnet. Her hands clutched a ragged doll, its head stitched back on with mismatched thread. Her eyes, wide green, familiar, hit Jed in the gut like a horseshoe. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stared. The woman glanced at the girl, then back at him. "We don't bite." Jed stepped aside. The woman nodded once and walked in. The girl followed, one small boot step at a time, like she was afraid the floor might break under her. Jed closed the door behind them, slow. Inside, the cabin smelled of dry wood and dust. A fire hadn't been lit in the hearth in weeks. Cobwebs laced the rafters. A single chair by the window, a rifle on the wall, and a kitchen untouched since spring. The woman set her satchel down beside the table. Her hand never left the strap. "You got flour?" Jed stared. "You got anything that can be baked or fried?" He gestured to the pantry with a tilt of his head. She crossed the room, boots thudding softly on pine boards, opened it, and scanned the shelves. Beans, salt, sack of cornmeal, jar of lard. She closed it. Enough. The girl hadn't spoken. She stood beside the hearth, staring at the fireplace like it might light itself. Jed watched them both. He hadn't seen a woman this close since the funeral. Hadn't seen a child that age in even longer. Not since. He turned away, jaw tight. The woman didn't look at him when she asked, "You got a name?" He said nothing. She turned her head. "You mute? Or just stubborn?" His voice, when it came, was rough with rust. "Jed." She paused, as if rolling the name around in her mind, then nodded once. "Miriam." Jed glanced at the girl. She didn't answer. Miriam said, "Ellie, 6. The girl blinked once. Then again, still holding the doll. Jed moved to the window. The road was empty behind them. No dust trails, no riders, no wagons, nothing but the endless stretch of heat and sky. "What did you hear?" he asked at last. Miriam started pulling pans from the hooks. "Told me there was a man up here living on jerky and bad whiskey. Told me he'd forgotten how to boil a pot of water. Figured he might be grateful." Jed grunted. "Who told you?" She didn't answer. Outside, the wind kicked up again. A screen of dust rolled across the ridge and slammed into the porch with a hollow whump. The shutters banged once. Ellie flinched. Miriam didn't look up. "You got a well?" Jed nodded. "Good. I'll need water." She lit the stove with flint and steel, bare fingers steady near the flame. She worked like she'd done it 1,000 times, as if this were her kitchen, her fire, her home. Jed didn't like how natural it felt. He crossed to the girl. She didn't look at him. Her face was turned toward the floor, doll clutched tighter now. The stitched neck looked new. He crouched slowly, knees creaking. "That your friend?" he asked. She nodded barely. "What's her name?" The girl blinked. "Mabel." "That's a good name." The silence hung heavy between them. "You know how to ride?" he asked. Ellie looked up, eyes meeting his. "Green, like her." Miriam broke the silence. "She can learn." Jed stood. "I'll show her the mare tomorrow. If you're staying." "We are," Miriam said without hesitation. "You ain't asked what I'll pay." She turned, a bowl of cornmeal in one hand, water in the other. "We're not here for money." Jed narrowed his eyes. "Then what?" Miriam poured the water slow. Steam hissed. The fire popped. We're here to be useful. Nothing more. The skillet sizzled. The smell of batter and lard filled the air. Real food, hot and fresh. The first scent of comfort in years. Ellie leaned closer to the hearth, watching. Jed leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Outside, the wind died down. The woman flipped the cakes with a practiced hand. The girl hummed softly, a tune he didn't recognize. Somewhere deep in the corner of the room, the quiet began to breathe again. And for the first time in 3 winters, the silence didn't feel like a curse. The skillet hissed. Black smoke curled up like a signal as the corn cakes burned. Miriam stood at the stove, eyes fixed out the window, hand motionless over the pan. Jed stepped in from the porch, brushing dust from his shirt. You're burning, Em. She didn't flinch. There were riders on the ridge this morning. Jed froze. How many? 4. Black coats. Just sitting there. Jed walked past her, pushing the door open with his shoulder. The sun cut sharp across the canyon. Nothing but red earth and dying brush. Empty now. He stood there long enough to be sure. Behind him, Miriam scraped the ruined cakes into the ash bucket. The metal clinked. They weren't from around here, she said, voice low. Didn't look like cowboys. Didn't look like law. Jed's jaw tightened. Could be passing through. She didn't answer. The girl sat cross-legged by the doorframe, playing with Mabel. Jed looked down at her. You see them too? Ellie nodded. One had a scar on his neck. Jed blinked. Looked back at Miriam. She's 6. She's observant, Miriam said. He turned away and took the rifle down from above the mantel. Checked the chamber. Still clean. Still loaded. Not my fight, he muttered. Maybe not, Miriam said, wiping the skillet with a rag. But they're coming here. That night, the wind rose with a scream. It clawed through the shutters and rattled the tin roof. Jed tossed in his cot. In the other room, wood creaked under light footsteps. He rose slow, bare feet on cold floor, and pushed the door open. The fire still burned low. Miriam sat by it, sleeves rolled, shirt open at the shoulder. A strip of cloth in her teeth. She cleaned a wound, puckered, old but angry, running jagged from her collarbone to just above the breast. Her revolver, black and gleaming, rested in her lap. She looked up, didn't cover herself. Didn't mean to wake you, she said. Jed's eyes flicked to the gun. That always stay that close. Her smile was tired. Closer. You were hit. She dipped the cloth in hot water. 2 months ago. Haven't stopped moving since. Jed crossed to the hearth and sat across from her. Who are they? She looked into the flames. You ever hear the Red Ridge Gang? Jed nodded. They burned that stage out near Abilene. Took a whole family with it. I was the one hunted them down. 6 out of 10. One took a bullet to the face. Still lived. Bo Crowley. He's the one with the scar. Jed stared. Miriam said nothing more. Just tied off the bandage, winced, then leaned back against the wall. Thought Pinkertons didn't take women, Jed muttered. They don't. Not officially. The silence stretched. The wind howled like it was dragging old ghosts across the land. Jed looked toward the girl's room. Why bring the child? She's mine, Miriam said, eyes locked on the fire. And they'll come for her too. Jed swallowed hard. You could have kept running. Miriam's eyes flashed. I'm done running. The fire cracked. A log collapsed in a glowing red. Jed stood. He looked down at her, at the gun resting on her lap, at the satchel that never left her side. You came here for more than work. She didn't deny it. You knew I'd help. I hoped, she said softly. You got a rep, Callahan. That rep died with my family. Maybe, but the man didn't. He walked out without another word, boots thudding heavy on old planks. At dawn, Jed stood by the corral, watching Ellie try to mount the old mare. She fumbled with the stirrups, too small for the saddle. Fell once, caught herself. He didn't move to help. Too big, she said. Too stubborn, Jed replied. She looked up. The horse. He shook his head. You. She smiled barely. It passed like a shadow. He walked over, adjusted the stirrups, and crouched to meet her eyes. You scared? She nodded. Good, he said. Means you got sense. She climbed up with his boost. Sat awkward, one leg half straight. He held the reins, walked her in a slow circle. Her fingers gripped leather tight. But her chin was high. Miriam watched from the porch. rifle across her arms, satchel still slung over her back. Her gaze never left the horizon. That afternoon, the wind stopped. No sound, no birds. Even the bugs went quiet. Jed sat cleaning the old Colt he'd hidden behind the floorboard. It felt wrong in his hands, and right. Miriam sat beside him, rewrapping her shoulder. "They'll come at night," she said. "They always do." He nodded. "You still good with that?" "Good enough. I heard you once dropped 2 men in a saloon before the third finished drawing." "That was a long time ago. Bullets don't care about time." Jed didn't answer, just spun the cylinder, snapped it shut. She studied him. He used to be called the judge. He stiffened. She continued, "I didn't come here by accident, Jed." The wind returned, slow and whispering. He stood. "Then you already know how this ends." Miriam stood too. "I'm hoping it ends better this time." He turned to her. Their eyes locked, both marked by old fires. And in that quiet pause, when the world seemed to hold its breath, Jed offered the closest thing he'd known to a vow. The ground shuddered first, a low, rhythmic thump like thunder, still miles off. Then came the dust, rising in plumes from the ridgeline, curling like smoke against the orange sky. Jed lowered the spyglass. "They're here." Miriam didn't flinch. She was crouched by the fence post, hands stained with oil and powder, setting the last trap. A length of barbed wire coiled across the trail, hidden beneath a scatter of dry grass. The sharp metal gleamed like teeth in the fading light. "How long?" she asked. 15 minutes, Jed said. "Maybe less." Miriam rose, dusted her hands, and slung the rifle over her back. Her revolver rode high on her hip. The bandage at her shoulder bled through faintly, but she moved like it didn't matter. "Ellie, in the root cellar," Jed said. "She's got the Derringer. She knows how to use it." Jed looked at her. "She watched you shoot a rattler at 30 paces 2 days ago. That girl learns fast." The wind picked up again. Not screaming this time, just humming, like it knew what was coming. Jed took one last look at the corral, the shack, the land he'd worked with blistered hands in silence for too many years. Miriam stepped beside him, close but not touching. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded. The riders crested the ridge. 4 of them, black coats flapping like crow wings, horses snorting steam into the cooling dusk. The lead rider was massive, taller than the rest by half a head, with a broad-brimmed hat and a neck twisted with scar tissue. His horse was gray with black socks, and its hooves tore the earth like it owed it blood. "Bo Crowley," Miriam said. Jed said nothing. He just stepped into the shadows by the well and waited. The riders came slow, confident, hunting. They stopped 10 yards from the gate. Didn't speak, just sat, watching the shack. Bo finally leaned forward. "Miriam," he called, voice like gravel and rot. "Didn't think you'd crawl all the way out here to die." Jed saw Miriam's fingers twitch near the revolver, then still. "You always did talk too much, Bo," she called back. He laughed, cruel and hollow. "You gonna let the law do your talking again? Ain't no courts out here. Ain't no Pinkertons. Just dirt." Jed stepped forward. "Not quite," he said. Bo's head turned slowly. He studied Jed like a vulture sizing up a fresh corpse. Then his eyes narrowed. "I know you." Jed didn't answer. "Jed Callahan, the judge." The name landed heavy. One of the other riders shifted in the saddle. Bo smiled wide and rotted. "You're supposed to be dead." Jed shrugged. "I was." Then someone knocked on my door. The moment hung. Then Bo's smile vanished. "I want the girl." Miriam stepped forward. "You'll get iron." Bo raised his hand. 2 riders dismounted, drawing rifles. They fanned out, moving toward the shack. That's when the trap snapped. One rider's horse screamed as its leg tangled in barbed wire, crashing hard. The man tumbled into dust. The second paused, gun raising. Crack! Jed's rifle kicked once. The shot split the air. The man spun and dropped, hit clean through the neck. Bo bellowed, drew his pistol, and fired wildly toward the house. Miriam was already moving, sliding behind a trough, returning fire in sharp, controlled bursts. Jed worked the lever of his rifle, dropping another of Bo's men as he scrambled for cover. Gunfire thundered across the clearing. Wood splintered. Dust exploded from the ground in violent bursts. Bo reined his horse in, retreating behind a mesquite bush, spitting curses. "You always bring friends to die for you, Bo," Jed shouted. "Don't eat him," Bo growled, eyes burning. Miriam rolled to a new position, ducked behind the water barrels. Her sleeve was soaked now, shoulder hit again. She gritted her teeth, fired once, and her bullet kissed Bo's hat clean off. Bo snarled. Then there was silence. The shooting stopped. Only the wind remained, dry and mean, twisting between the buildings. Jed stepped out into the open. Slowly, rifle lowered but ready. "Come on, Bo. Let's finish it." From behind the mesquite, Bo rose like a bear, pistol in one hand, machete in the other. He walked forward, boots thudding heavy in the dirt. Jed didn't move. 20 paces. 15. 10. Bo stopped. "You think you still got it?" he hissed. Jed said nothing, just looked him in the eye. Then a click behind Bo. The last rider, who'd circled around toward the back, had crept to the cellar. And Ellie stood there, hands shaking, derringer raised, pointing right at him. The man froze. "I ain't afraid," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Jed saw Bo flinch, just a flicker of distraction. It was enough. Jed raised the rifle. Fired. Bo staggered back, shot square in the thigh. He dropped to a knee, howling. Jed moved forward, quick and sure. Bo raised the machete. Miriam shot into it. One clean hole in the center of his chest. Bo slumped forward. The dust swallowed him. The wind died. Bo hit the dust with a grunt and didn't rise. His revolver slid from his hand, spinning once before settling near his outstretched fingers. Blood spread from his chest in slow, widening arcs, soaking into the dirt that had never forgiven anyone. Jed stood over him, barrel still hot. Bo coughed. A wet, gurgling sound. "You should have stayed dead." Jed chambered a fresh round. "You first." Bo's eyes went glassy. His mouth opened like it had one more threat left, but death took it before it could crawl out. Miriam stepped beside Jed, shoulder wrapped tight, face hard and drawn. "That all of him?" Jed turned slowly, rifle raised, eyes scanning the edge of the ridge. A single rider, the last, had turned tail, horse kicking up dust as he fled toward the horizon. No shots followed. No curses chased his name. Some men are better left to live with the fear. Jed lowered his rifle. The wind picked up again, gentler this time. Like the land itself was exhaling. Behind them, the door to the cellar creaked open. Ellie stepped out, derringer still in her hands. Her small boots crunched across the packed earth as she walked toward them, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. She stared at Bo's body, then at Jed, then at her mother. "You okay?" Miriam asked. Ellie nodded. "I didn't shoot. I almost did." "That's enough," Jed said softly. Miriam knelt and pulled the girl close, hiding her trembling behind strength. Jed walked to the porch, sat on the top step. The rifle rested across his knees. Blood on the dirt. Smoke still in the air. But it was quiet now. The kind of quiet that follows judgment. They buried Bo and his men beneath the canyon wall. No markers. No prayers. Miriam drove the last shovel into the mound and turned to Jed. "That's the end of it." Jed wiped sweat from his brow. "Unless the next fool rides in thinking he's braver than the last." She chuckled low. "Let him try." Back at the shack, Ellie poured water into a basin and soaked rags with a kind of grown-up calm. She pressed one to her mother's wound while Miriam winced but didn't pull away. Jed sat across from them, holding a tin cup of coffee he hadn't tasted yet. "Why'd you come to me?" he asked. Miriam didn't look up. "Because I knew you'd do what was right, even if it hurt." Jed swallowed. "Haven't been right in a long time. You were today." Silence fell again, but it wasn't empty. "Not anymore." Ellie looked up suddenly. "Can we stay?" Miriam froze. Her eyes flicked to Jed. He didn't answer right away, just stared out the window, where the trail curved off toward the ridge, where Bo had come from, where others might follow. Then he said, quiet as thunder under the ground, "Place could use a cook." Ellie smiled. That evening, the three of them sat on the porch. The sky burned purple over the bluff. Coyotes yipped far off, and the stars began to prick the dark like tiny truths. Miriam leaned back in the chair that used to sit empty. Her revolver rested in her lap, but it no longer looked like a weapon. It looked like a memory. Jed whittled a piece of pine, the shavings falling at his feet, not carving anything in particular. just shaping something rough into something better. Ellie sat on the steps, braiding Mabel's yarn hair with the focus of someone who'd stared death in the face and chosen not to blink. Miriam spoke without turning her head. Think they'll remember what happened here. Jed glanced toward the canyon. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. But you remember. You were there. That day when a cook knocked on a dead man's door. Jed smiled, and the Bluff fought back. Final narration, folklore style, spoken like firelight truth. They still tell it, out in those parts, when the wind runs dry and the stars fall still. About the day a woman rode to Widow's Bluff with nothing but a girl and a 6-shot iron. About how death came knocking and got turned away with lead and grit. And how a man who thought his life was over learned it was just waiting to begin again. You ask old-timers round the fire, they'll say the same. The land remembers, and so do we.